Just rip it through here. It's actually doing really well. It's usually not this stable and fast.
This is an all-in-one FPV kit that includes everything you need to get started flying FPV right now. And this is the Aquila16 FPV kit by BetaFPV. And it's aimed at beginners that are looking for a budget-friendly way to get into FPV and learn how to fly. And at only $250 US, this kit still includes some good quality gear. On the back of the box, you can see all the gear that's included with the kit. So let's open it up and check it all out. Now, something that's really nice about this kit is it comes with this quality carrying case that securely holds all the gear, which is convenient for transportation and storage. And if I open it up, the first thing that you're going to find is the manual. And this manual is actually very thorough, so I would suggest reading through all of it because it explains in details all of the features of the kit and everything you need to know about flying the drone. And you can see, like I mentioned, everything is securely stored, so even if I flip it upside down, nothing's going to fall out. Starting on this side, we have the goggles, which are BetaFPV's VR03 goggles, and they're an analog box goggle, about what you'd expect at this price point. Stuffed inside, there's a head strap, and that will attach to this clasp on top and these clips on the sides. And down below we have the controller, which is BetaFPV's Light Radio 2 SE, and I actually really like this controller. It feels good in the hands, it has this silicone gimbal protector, and it has nice metal switches. It also has ELRS built in, which makes it compatible with most other FPV drones out there. And it can also be used with FPV simulators on your computer, which is a great way to get extra practice. And if you're a beginner, I would suggest at least trying manual mode on a simulator before trying it with the actual drone. It might save you a little bit of frustration. And over on this side, we have the drone, and it looks like a typical little Cinewhoop. It weighs 47.1 grams without a battery and 72.5 grams with the battery that comes in this kit. And on the bottom, there's this sensor that's used for optical flow, which I'll talk more about shortly, but that one feature is what makes this an excellent drone for beginners to learn on. And then there's a zip-up pouch that has a bunch of stuff in it. There's a USB cable that can be used to charge all the gear, but any USB cable will work. And you'll also have to provide your own charging block. And then there are two batteries, and the batteries that come with this kit are 1S 1100 milliamp hour batteries. And that's pretty big for a 1S battery. That's probably why they say you can get up to 8 minutes of flight time, which might not seem like much if you're coming from camera drones, but in the world of FPV, that's a pretty long flight time. And the battery connector is a BT 2.0, which is pretty common for 1S drones. You also get a battery charger that doubles as a battery checker. And then there's a bag of accessories. And I'm just going to dump this out to show you everything that comes in here. So you get a spare set of props. There's a prop removal tool. There's a bag of spare screws and a mini screwdriver. There's also this adapter that can be used to connect your drone to your computer if you want to use the BetaFPV configuration software to make changes to your drone. And then there's these two BT 2.0 extension cables, and because the batteries are unique, you'll have to use this extension cable to plug it into the charger. So you just plug one end into the battery, and then you plug the other end into the charger. And if you plug it into this test port, then you can see the battery voltage. And this charger will charge it up to about 4.3 volts. And I usually fly it down to about 3.5 or 3.3 volts, but no lower than that. And if you want to store the batteries, you should have them around 3.8 volts. Now, if I could offer a tip, I wouldn't plug these connectors all the way in because then they're very hard to get out. And if you pull on the wires, you might damage the cable. So I just plug them in a little ways and leave a bit of a gap there, so then they're easy to unplug. And you can also charge both batteries with this charger because there's two ports. And then you just plug the charger into with a USB-C cable. And then lastly, there's a product card in here that has a bunch of QR codes that you can use to get information and support on the kit. All right, I'm gonna quickly show you some indoor flying, and then I'll go through the setup modes and features in more detail before getting into the outdoor flights. So all I need to do right now is power everything on and make sure it all connects, and it looks like it is. I'm not sure if you can see the video in the goggles. So I'm just gonna start the DVR. And then I wanna make sure my mode and speed switches are all the way down, so I'm in normal mode and on the slow setting. Everything is connected, ready to go. So I can just arm the drone, and then I just have to raise the throttle a little ways above half, and it should take off. And now I can start flying around. Now, I'm not gonna do a whole lot of flying around indoors because I don't have a lot of space, but I just wanted to show you that it can be done, and it's actually quite easy, especially if you're flying around in normal mode, because in normal mode, you don't have to actively manage the throttle to maintain your altitude. The drone does that automatically. So as long as you keep the throttle in the mid position, the drone will maintain a constant altitude, and it actually does a pretty good job of doing that. And that's a feature that your typical FPV drones don't have. So this certainly makes the learning curve a lot easier. So when you're in normal mode to fly around, you basically just have to push forward on the right stick to fly forward. You can pull back on it to fly backwards, and move it left or right to slide to the left or right. And then you can use the left stick to yaw or rotate the drone. And then if you want to increase your altitude, you can just raise the throttle. Or if you want to decrease your altitude, you can lower the throttle, and then just move it back to the mid position to keep it at a constant altitude. Now, another really nice feature of this drone is it has multiple speeds. And right now I'm in slow, so you can start off in slow if you're a beginner, and it's pretty easy to fly around. And then once you get more comfortable with the controls, you can increase the speed. So right now I'll go up to mid, and now the drone will be able to tilt more and therefore fly faster. And then if you want to get going really fast, you can increase the speed to fast. But I don't really have the space for flying in fast. If I tried to fly full speed, I would definitely end up crashing. So I'm just going to lower it back down to mid. And then once you get really comfortable flying in normal, you could maybe try sport mode if you want, but it's a lot more challenging because then you're in full control of the throttle, so it's a lot more to focus on other than just flying around and steering. But I'll show you sport mode, so I'm just going to quickly land the drone because it's much easier than switching mid-flight. I'll just land it. I'm going to disarm. And I'll turn the drone around, put it into sport mode. And now I can arm the drone. And as soon as I start giving it throttle, it's gonna start to take off. So now I am in full control of my altitude. So I have to actively be managing the throttle just to try and fly around smoothly. And it can be pretty challenging. Whew. But with some practice, you will get better, and you will be able to fly around smoother. Now, I'm not going to try manual mode indoors here, because there's really not much more I can do inside than I could do with sport mode. I'm certainly not going to be trying to do flips or rolls, so I'll save manual mode for the outdoors flights. So that's basically flying indoors. I'm just going to bring it back and try and land it, which is a little bit more challenging in sport mode, but should be able to get it over here and bring it in nice and smooth, and there we go. So that's flying indoors. All right, let's take a closer look at some of this stuff. Starting out with the goggles, for a budget-friendly kit, the goggles don't feel cheap. They have some nice padding around here, so they're comfortable on your face. And on the side, there's the antenna that rotates so you can keep it down for storage, and just make sure you have it up when you're flying. And something that's nice about these goggles is they have a built-in DVR, so you can record your flights. You'll just have to insert a micro SD card into the slot on the side, and just note that the largest micro SD you can use is 64 gigabytes. So keep that in mind, because if you try to use something larger, it won't work. And then up top you have 4 buttons. The first button is to stop and start recording. Just press the button, you'll hear some beeps, and then after a couple seconds, the record time will show up in the upper left corner of the goggles. The other 3 buttons are used to navigate menus in the goggles and change the band and channel. The buttons with the arrows will manually change the band and channel, but I wouldn't use those because the S button will search the available bands and channels and automatically find the drone. Now, you shouldn't need to do that when you get it because everything should be already connected. Now, on the side, you have the power switch and a USB-C port for charging. If I slide the power switch forward, the goggles should turn on. And if I were to plug in the drone, you can see that the drone is connected to the goggles. Now, moving on to the drone, first off, there is no power button or switch, so to turn it on, you have to plug in the battery, and to do that, you just line up the battery with the slots on the top of the drone and slide it forward. When it turns on, it will flash blue at first, and then it'll turn solid blue if it connects, or flash yellow if it doesn't, and there are some other colors that I'll go through shortly. But now, to power it off, you just slide the battery backwards. The camera that comes with the drone is BetaFPV CO2 camera, and it's a pretty basic analog camera. The camera angle can be adjusted just by moving it up and down. It also has an integrated VTX that will output from 25 milliwatts up to 350 milliwatts, which should give you up to about 200 meters of range. The drone is also made of a pretty durable plastic. I've crashed this several times already testing it out, and outside of a few scuffs, there's really no damage. The motors it comes with are 1102 18,000 kV motors, and if you're new to FPV, that probably doesn't mean anything to you, but that's what they are. And then on the bottom, there's a port that you can plug the adapter that you get with this kit into to connect your drone to your computer and update the firmware or change the configuration. And then there's the optical flow sensor. And what optical flow does is allow the drone to automatically maintain its position and altitude when it's in normal mode, which is great for beginners because then the drone manages most of the throttle control and you just have to worry about steering the drone and getting used to the controls. And speaking of controls, let's have a look at the controller. So this is a mode 2 controller, which means the throttle's on the left and the pitch and roll is on the right. To power it on, just press and hold the power button. It will turn red, and then you'll hear some beeps, and then it should turn blue. And then press the power button again to turn it off. Up front, there are some switches. The top 2 are 3-position switches, and the bottom 2 are 2-position switches. The bottom left will arm and disarm the drone. The top left will select the mode. All the way down is normal, in the middle is sport, and up top is manual. The top right switch will select the speed, all the way down is slow, in the middle is mid, and up top is fast. So if you're a beginner, just start with the switches all the way down, and as you get more comfortable, you can increase the speed, and then eventually progress through the modes. Now the bottom right switch, when the drone isn't armed, if you toggle it, will switch the channel of the drone, which can be handy if you're flying with someone else and you need to change channels. When the drone is armed, this switch will enable turtle mode. And what turtle mode does is if you crash and the drone is flipped over, you can enable turtle mode and then use the right stick to flip the drone over. Now to charge the controller, there's a USB-C port, and the manual says this is an audio port, but I don't really know what that's for. And then there's a setup and bind button. The setup button will allow you to calibrate the gimbals, and the bind button will allow you to bind the controller to a drone, but you won't need to do that with this one because when you get it, it will already be connected. All right, now that we're through all that, getting everything set up to fly really couldn't be much simpler. Essentially, all you have to do is power everything on. So if I first power on the controller, and then I power on the drone, Now, I'm just going to pick it up to quickly demonstrate something. When you first power on the drone, it'll be flashing blue, which indicates it's doing its horizontal calibration. So if I hold it like this, it will continue to flash until I set it down on a level surface, and then it'll finish its calibration and turn solid blue, and now it's connected to the controller. But now if I turn off the controller, the drone starts flashing yellow, indicating that it's not connected to the controller. Now, something to keep in mind when you're powering on the controller, the throttle has to be all the way down, otherwise it won't connect. So if I raise the throttle a bit and then power on the controller, you'll see the controller stays red and the drone continues to flash yellow until I lower the throttle all the way down, and then they both turn blue and now they're connected. And once they're connected, you can arm the drone. You just have to flip the arm switch up, and now the drone is armed. And then to disarm it, flip the arm switch down. And something to keep in mind when you're arming the drone, the throttle also has to be all the way down, otherwise the drone won't arm. So if I raise the throttle up a bit and then try to arm it, the drone will start to flash white, and then I just need to disarm, lower the throttle all the way down, and then I can arm the drone. And now the drone's ready to fly. All I need to do is power on the goggles and make sure they're connected. And the goggles are connected. So if you want to start a recording, you just press the record button, you'll hear 2 beeps, and then you'll have to wait several seconds before the recording actually starts. And you'll know it starts when the record time shows up in the goggle display. And there's also a red light that starts blinking on the side of the goggles. Now, what makes this drone really great for beginners is it has this normal mode with auto leveling and altitude hold. So the drone basically does most of the flying for you in normal mode. And just to show you how easy it is, I have everything powered on and it's connected, and I just need to arm the drone and then raise the throttle and the drone takes off. Now, as long as the right stick is in the center and you're not touching, well, you can be touching it, but as long as it's in the center, the drone will maintain level flight. It's getting pushed around a little bit by the wind. And as long as the throttle is in the mid position, it will maintain a constant altitude. Now, keep in mind, this is an entry-level drone, so it's not going to do it perfectly, but it certainly does a good enough job, as you can see, that it makes this thing very easy to fly. So even as a beginner, you can start flying this thing no problem, just in normal mode, and get used to the controls before moving on to sport and manual mode, because in both of those, you have to actively manage the throttle to maintain your altitude. So you couldn't do something like this and just let go of the controller and have the drone keep flying. All right, let's see how this thing does outdoors. So I'm just gonna quickly power everything up. The drone down there. And make sure everything's connected. My goggles aren't, so I'll just hold down the S button and search. There we go. Now I got video signal, so I'll just start the DVR. All right. Everything's connected, ready to go. DVR is going. So now I'm going to start with all the switches down. So I'll start in normal mode and slow. Now I'll arm the drone, raise the throttle, and it takes off and start flying around. And when you're in normal mode, the drone pretty much manages the throttle. If you keep it somewhere in the center, the drone will just kind of maintain its altitude, and you can fly around with the right stick and just use the left stick to rotate. But it's really easy to fly around. I think slow is probably better suited for indoors. When you're outside, you have more room, so let's just go ahead and bump the speed up to mid. There you go. And now the drone will bank a little bit more so you can get more speed. And I like mid. I think mid's actually a good speed for this drone.
I do find fast. I will actually just show. I'll show you. Let's flip it into fast. And now when I start flying around, well, it's doing pretty good right now because there's really no wind. But in any sort of wind, I just find with fast, it starts, it gets these wobbles like that kind of when you go to turn. So if you pick up a lot of speed, it kind of starts to wobble. And I think that's just limitations with the PID tune. Keep in mind, it is an entry-level drone and kit, so you know, I think it flies pretty good considering. So I'm just gonna flip it back into mid. And normal mode's really good to learn on because you can kind of just get used to the sticks or used to flying with the right stick and not worry so much about the throttle. And it does handle pretty good. You can really feel when the wind starts to pick up, you know, even slightly, it does get blown around a fair bit. But it's really easy to fly around in normal mode. And now I'm going to switch over to sport mode. Now in sport mode, you're going to have to manage the throttle. So it gets a little more challenging. There we go, we're in sport mode. So now in sport mode, you have to manage the throttle, but the bank angles are limited. So you can't flip it over. And if you somewhat get disoriented, you can just return the right stick to the center and the drone will auto level. Oh, I let it fall down and hit the ground. That's one thing that's nice with this drone is it is durable. So especially flying it over grass like this, you know, there's no worries of crashing it. You're not going to damage it. Now, if you crash it into concrete enough, maybe you will, but it's pretty durable, which you want a beginner drone to be durable because when you're learning to fly, you're probably going to crash it a bit. So I think sport mode is pretty fun to fly around in. It'll take a little bit, if you're brand new, it'll take a bit of getting used to. First flying around in normal mode before you kind of want to move into sport mode where you're actually having to manage the throttle. But I think it does give you a lot more maneuverability. So once you do learn, it's a lot more fun to fly it around. And then now let's switch it into, well, let me first go into fast. Oh, shoot, I went into, oh, I didn't mean to do that. There we go, get back into sport. Now I wanted to get it go into fast. And now I can get going a little bit faster. You know, the wind's picking up a little bit, so it's getting a little more challenging to fly. Those oscillations. Jeez. All right. Now I'm just going to flip it into manual mode. I'm going to flip it back into mid first, and then we're going into manual. So now you have full control. There's no bank angle limiting, so you can flip it right over. Do flips and rolls. Now I wouldn't say this configuration is the best for acro. There is a 650 milliamp battery you can get with this, which is lighter to make it more agile when it comes to acro. But you can, if you want to do flips and rolls, you can do them. Oh, and if you crash doing it, oh well, just keep flying. So I'd have to say, yeah, mid is like my favorite speed setting. I just find it smoother like that. I get the oscillations less. And I think you have plenty of speed to kind of cruise around and have fun. Do some high-speed passes in front of the camera. All right, the battery's starting to get low, so I'm gonna bring it down, but that's over 6 minutes of flying outside, which is really good.
All right, now one last thing. I did mention in the beginning that this controller can be used with FPV simulators on your computer. So I just want to quickly show you how that works. Now, it should be compatible with most simulators. I'm using this DRL sim, but all you need is a USB-C cable that's plugged into your computer, and then you just plug it into the controller. Now, you don't power on the controller, just leave it powered off, and after a few seconds, it should turn red, and then a few seconds later, it should turn green, and then it's connected, and that's really all I had to do. I did go in and do this quick calibration, but now I can just quickly select a few things and wait for it to load, and now I can just start flying around. So this is a nice option to have, especially when you're just learning to fly in manual mode, or if you want to get some extra practice and maybe try some new things and not have to worry about crashing and damaging your drone. So that's everything about the Aquila16 FPV kit by BetaFPV. And making this video, I've flown this thing a lot, testing out all the different modes and features, flying it indoors and outdoors. And I think for a budget-friendly entry-level FPV kit, it certainly gets the job done. It's very easy to set up, and the different flight modes make it easy for really anyone to start flying. And then with the more advanced flight modes, you can progress your skills. I think the controller is great. It's nice and compact, the gimbals feel good, and I like the metal switches. It's definitely something you could continue to use if you upgrade the drone. Now, the drone itself does have its limitations. Flying outdoors, it struggles in the wind, and it's not the most agile, but for learning on, it's quite easy to fly, and after many crashes, mine didn't break and it still flies just fine. Now, the goggles I did have some trouble seeing with because I do need some correction in the lenses, but I was still able to use them and fly around no problem. I did also fly it with my other analog goggles, and the image quality was much better, which did make it much easier to fly, but those goggles also cost twice as much as this entire kit. So if you were thinking about trying out FPV and want to get everything you need in one kit that comes set up ready to fly and not spend 4 times as much money, the Aquila16 FPV kit is something you should consider. It's a beginner-friendly, budget-friendly way to try out FPV. And I've included some links in the description if you want to purchase the Aquila16 FPV kit or find out more information about it or other products from BetaFPV. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video and found it informative. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.